The NFL news cycle went from a slow drip to a fire hose in a matter of just mere seconds, it felt like. The last 2 days have been a whirlwind. Here to help me break it down on the RotoWire Fantasy Podcast is Zareh Kantzabedian from Football Guys. He's a Dynasty contributor there. Coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Everybody, welcome to RotoWire and the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Zareh Kantzabedian from Football Guys. He's a Dynasty contributor there. And also, we're in the same Scott Fishbowl Live League down in Orange County about a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. Zareh, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm honored to be here, Jeff. Like you said, it's a fire hose of news and camp reports, and I'm drenched already. I can't even dry myself off yet.
I know. Well, especially with this heat that we got right here.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's crazy. All right, so much to talk about. Yesterday morning, first of all, I stayed up to like 1:30 writing this article, and I had to get up at early the next day. Woke up at 6, and somehow in between those goalposts, huge news broke with Saquon Barkley ending not even really a holdout, but just agreeing to terms with the Giants and purporting the first day of camp.
Yeah, I mean, I was on a podcast last week, and we were talking about Jacobs and Saquon, and I was kind of saying that Saquon would sign first, just because when you look at the projection or the trajectory of both teams, the Raiders and the Giants, you see Dable, and he's all business. He's serious about working with the pieces that he has. He's constantly adding new pieces to that team, trying to get it better. You just, when you're serious about winning, and you gotta sign Saquon. When you're talking about Jacobs is fine. Jacobs led the league in rush attempts last year, but we saw what does that actually add to the, how many wins does it actually add to a team? Just because your running back has a lot of rush attempts and he's efficient on the ground, how many wins does it add? And we saw the Raiders weren't really any better off with, that kind of running back efficiency. I'm sure there are some places that, that have, he'd probably fit a team that is already in on a winning Super Bowl team that needs that kind of caliber running back. But right now, I don't think the Raiders really need that because they understand their position in the league, and just signing somebody to a heavy contract right now just wouldn't be a very business savvy decision, I think. So Saquon, I think, for Dable, for the Giants, for a team looking that won a wild card game against the Vikings last year, they're like, okay, we have a possibility here. And, Dable's a smart guy. Dable had Saquon running the third most routes among running backs last year. And he targeted Saquon very heavily. I think Saquon was at 20 targets per route run. So, I mean, that's, 20% target share per route run is very good for running back. So,
yeah. Absolutely. All things start there with him, and now new acquisition, Darren Waller. That's where the offense flows through. The wide receivers, they're trying to improve there. They both in the draft and free agency, but let's face it, none of those guys are. Jamar Chase isn't walking through that door. They have to try to find what they can. I mean, they got a great find in Hodgins last year, but Barkley's presence frees up those wideouts. I mean, you have to account for Barkley in every sort of formation that they run.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I also like some of the ancillary pieces that he added over there on the Giants. I think Paris Campbell's a good little yak guy. Mm-hmm. They have a wide receiver for every dimension of the passing game, it seems like right now. They have a possession guy. They got Shepard. Then they got Hyatt for their deep speed guy. And they got Paris Campbell for a yak kind of bubble screen kind of guy. But yeah, Saquon is a team that Saquon is a player that, regardless of the narrative of if running backs matter or not, defenses and coaches still have to plan for him. So, that's still irrelevant. Coaches and defenses aren't going to be worried too much about Matt Breida or Eric Gray or God knows whoever. I forgot the other running backs on that team, but I mean,
James Robinson.
James,
huge.
Is that where he is now? I mean, I
just signed last week,
and I completely quickly forgot about where James Robinson signed. Good luck to him.
How dare you?
Good luck to him. Hopefully he has a Deontay Foreman kind of resurgence. I hope it works out.
Meanwhile, Josh Jacobs was seen boarding a flight out of Vegas with a little, and if people are judging by body language and that he was boarding it angrily. I don't know how you can do that, but nonetheless, resolution doesn't seem at hand here.
No, it really doesn't. It kind of feels like shades of Le'Veon Bell when he held out that one year and he had pictures taken of him on jet skis and on the beaches of Florida and stuff like that. But I don't know what I just don't. It doesn't feel good. But I think ultimately he will sign just
Yep,
because
agreed.
it just honestly this whole running back thing, this whole running back scenario where they had the big old meeting. It kind of feels like I guess I'm a fantasy football conspiracy theorist, but it kind of feels like again like owners are kind of colluding to like they don't want this to happen. Like they don't need running backs to get paid. They don't want running backs to get paid. Just kind of like Lamar Jackson. I feel like my opinion was Lamar Jackson kind of like had the owners were like, please don't end up paying him. Please don't end up paying him. And they ended up paying him anyways. But like Josh Jacobs, it doesn't like he's got no real leverage over here. So he's gonna have to sign eventually, or he's just gonna, he's just kind of like out on his luck.
Yeah, I think so too. And the funny thing is, last year I heard it. I was listening to a couple of other shows yesterday, and I was in the car a lot yesterday. And one of the Raiders beat writers was actually talking about how he played so hard. It was a contract year, and this is another contract year now. Well, we know there's no reward. There's no there's no light at the end of the tunnel here for running backs. There is that, you're not going to get that windfall anymore. I think Todd Gurley kind of ended that. I think that might be the last windfall contract we see. If Barkley can't get it, how is Jacobs going to get it?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly kind of like the bar you got to measure it by, right? I mean it's just a labor dispute, and it's just not gonna. I don't see how running backs can get the leverage unless they bring in lawyers or something like that. And I don't know, NFLPA. Unless they really sit down this next off, I think there could, based off of what happened this offseason, I think there might be some kind of more collaborative effort by the running backs in the league or the NFLPA to come sit down with them and say, look, we take out the most punishment, we take the most punishment, and we get paid the less. So I mean, it has to make sense here. But I mean, I don't know. The NFL is a funny place. The way they pay players, and how quarterbacks get paid when they're not, get paid more and more money when they're not even deserving of it. It's a really funny place the way merit is delivered and how people are paid on merit out here.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like 7 more years on the collective bargaining agreement. So I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, and it's a zero sum thing. I mean, that's one of the other problems. Any sort of possible like salary cap hit solution is necessarily taking away from somewhere else. It's taken away from an interior lineman or taken away from a linebacker. That's not going to solve things. I mean, we got Chris Jones and Nick Bosa still out of camp right now. It could take away from pass rushers, and pass rushers are definitely still valued, the elite pass rushers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think offensive linemen are even more valuable. In my opinion, I think offensive linemen are more valuable than running backs just because they are the protection and they are the core, and everything that happens after the snap is determined on how well the protection is and how well the run blocking is. So, I mean, I agree with the gripe of running backs right now, but at the same time, like I understand, like, I mean, like I saw a poll on Twitter that asked who's more valuable, Justin Tucker or, Josh Jacobs. And I was like, oh man, Justin Tucker's really gotten them got the Ravens out of some tough spots with like 50-yard field goals, 60-yard field goals, so just it's a tough spot for running backs. But again, something's going to have to be done, and it's not looking too good right now. And you wonder how many kids are going to have how many players are going to have, parents are going to have their kids playing at running backs in like high school.
Well, I agree. I think it's a long-term problem there. So let's talk someone who did get the bag. Justin Herbert got paid yesterday. He's the latest domino to fall. There's still one more left with Joe Burrow, but it's not really a surprise that Herbert got done. I don't even know if this is actionable from our standpoint, but it's noteworthy to at least acknowledge that they did it.
Yeah, and I think people kind of dump on the Herbert contract signing, but again, it is the quarterback position. It is the engine of the offense. It is the off engine of putting points on the board. And Herbert did have a down year last year. He had an insane amount of pass attempts. I mean, everything was fine except like if you look at his stats, he was fine. He was great. Only thing that was off was his yards per attempt, but I think that's reflective of who he was throwing to, which was really nobody. We had Mike Williams and Keenan Allen out of different parts of the year. His main target was Austin Eckler. So I mean, if you look at like his yards per attempt was 6.8 in 2022, and he still put up 10 wins for the Chargers last year. I mean, if you look at quarterbacks who average 6.8 yards per attempt. I mean, I just did exercise just looking at it. Back to 2015, the QBs that averaged 6.8 yards per attempt and put up 10 wins for their team since 2015 were Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Cam Newton, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco. And there's like 8 Super Bowl champions, 8 Super Bowl champs, or 8 Super Bowl champ titles,
right?
On that winning quarterbacks on that list right there. And
I like how you snuck in the elite Joe Flacco there too.
I mean, I didn't want to, but I had to.
Yeah, right? Of course.
Would have found me on Twitter and be like, you held that out on purpose. I'd be like, yes, I did.
Exactly. Nobody wants that. I mean, that's like angering the Tua fans out there. You just don't do it. I mean,
just why? It's not worth the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll say this too. I mean, you alluded to importance of offensive line. They lost their left tackle last year, a huge pass blocker. And yeah, you want to be able to throw deep. You got to be able to protect your quarterback. As a Bengals guy, I know this. And you spend all the time that's been spent trying to upgrade that offensive line, only to see 3 guys go down in the last 2 weeks of the regular season, the first round of the playoffs. I mean, you saw the effect of that there in the AFC Championship game, and you saw it earlier in the season. Burrow's yards per attempt were down. It's not because he's less good at throwing deep. It's because he had no time.
Yeah, exactly. And they really had a good offensive line to start out with as a season. But again, in typical Chargers fashion, they kind of like it just starts to fall apart really quickly.
Exactly.
But and we were talking, and this alludes to what we were talking about before. The offensive line, offensive linemen, offensive tackle, guards, those guys are very important. And you got to prioritize those guys if you really want to, we saw what kind of like happened to Andrew Luck. Like they just never got it going with the offensive line. He was like, you know what, I'm done. It's been a couple of years of this, 2-3 years of this. It's not worth my health. And I don't disagree with that kind of stance that a quarterback takes. If they like say, look, my health is more important. If you guys aren't prioritizing my protection, then why should I be here? And the Chargers are clearly prioritizing that. They put on really good pieces they put really good pieces at the line in front of Justin Herbert to protect him. So, right. They're building something very good. They brought in a very good offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore.
Yep.
They just drafted Quentin Johnson with a first round pick. I mean, they're really making a concerted effort to help bolster Justin Herbert this year in his future. And, paying him is just another kind of a signal towards that.
Yeah, one other bullet point. He also played hurt last year. Got hurt in the second game of the year. And I'm sure that contributed a lack of his downfield throws. Nonetheless, that playoff game against Jacksonville where they didn't throw deep, that was on Lombardi, and that's why they fired him. And that's why you see Kellen Moore in there now.
Yeah.
So I expect good things. He's a top 10 quarterback. He's probably a top 6 quarterback. And he got paid accordingly. No issues with that.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney. Stop me if you've heard this before, but he's hurt. Unfortunately, he just had a procedure yesterday, dealing with the meniscus issue. He had some ligament issues prior to that. This is kind of big for the Chiefs. Juju is no longer on the team. Tyreek, a year gone. We have an unproven wide receiving core. Obviously, they have Travis Kelce, but someone else has to catch passes on this offense. Is there? First of all, in terms of like evaluating the remainder, are you Rashee Rice? Are you more into some of the other younger players on this wide receiving core? I know you're a Dynasty contributor. Do you like any of these guys?
I like them, but I'm not very enthusiastic. I'm taking these camp reports and clips of Rashee Rice and Sky Moore catching passes with a very, very small grain of salt.
Right.
I think, when you see a guy like Sky Moore, who was drafted in the second round last year, I believe, you see a guy like that who does really nothing his first year in the league. It's very scary to kind of like project him to a place of high production the very next year, coming off a year where he did almost nothing. Rashee Rice, the league has defined him as a deep speed guy, kind of a big body catcher who lacks the nuances of a technician right now. I think he's got a lot to learn. Patrick Mahomes has commented on a pass yesterday at camp where there was a miscommunication between he and Rice, and he said that Rice still needs to learn a few things about the position in the system. Kadarius Toney, I actually liked coming into the year. I thought he would be a great, if we're talking fantasy, I thought he's a great PPR option. I think he would be a very close to line of scrimmage target for Patrick Mahomes outside of Travis Kelce, who occupies more of the intermediate spaces of the field. Kind of like Tony would have been a souped up Juju Smith-Schuster, and Tony is far, far, far better in space than Juju Smith-Schuster was. So I'm approaching this team and this wide receiver core with a very, very small grain of salt. I think it's going to be pretty much similar to what we saw last year with Travis Kelce being the beneficiary of more targets. And If you wanted, I guess you can throw in Sky Moore as, just if I'm watching anybody this year, it's going to be Sky Moore, just because I liked who he was as a product coming as a rookie prospect coming out of college. It was a small school college, but I mean, the metrics were all there. But, this kind of goes, if we're having the conversation about what small school means and level of competition, I think it's a lot bigger than people make it out to be. Like, level of competition is huge. Coaching level is huge. How you're coached up as a defensive back in the SEC versus, a lower division school is huge. So,
Right.
I mean, we have to take that into accountability and the trajectory of Sky Moore's production and career arc in the league. Maybe we see, maybe year 3 will be a better year for Sky Moore as far instead of year 2. Maybe you can still get Sky Moore cheap in Dynasty after a year or 2 because he won't still be at that level that you want him to be at.
And Andy Reid's system is notoriously difficult to learn. Mecole Hardman never really got it.
No.
I think Rice will take as well. Do you have are you taking any flyers on Richie James or Justin Ross late, just as a result of this news, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, right? Because they're going nearly undrafted still. I mean, especially in Dynasty, you can still pay like a 3rd round pick and get, Justin Ross, who is a Dynasty darling, and rightfully so. He had a really bad, streak of injuries.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, take your shots on Richie James, take your shots on Justin Ross. Richie James, I think more of obviously a redraft seasonal kind of guy. You don't want to really be picking him up in Dynasty just because of the age. And what is he? He's 28, I believe right now.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, you can take your shots. They're very cheap. It's not going to hurt.
For sure. News item that shocked a lot of people. Jonathan Taylor going on the PUP list. First of all, reporting late, we knew he was kind of grumpy about the whole running back issue. And I don't mean to just dismiss it by just saying running back issue, but he was among those on the concerned running backs Zoom call and was I think showed up a little later than most. And then immediately goes on the PUP list after missing a good chunk of last season with that ankle. Concerned?
A little bit, but I mean, it seems like you're leaning more towards the narrative of a contract holdout. Am I hearing that?
I mean, I think that might be in the background. That I thought, it's just an issue, but I'm more concerned about the PUP list. I'm more concerned about I hope this isn't I mean, J.K. Dobbins is in a similar boat too. It's he missed a lot of OTAs and minicamp with a soft tissue issue. And then also was complaining about running back compensation. So, it's hard to parse. I mean, I think it's the lack of certainty. That's what's got me.
It could be a confluence of those factors. And,
right.
As far as, being on the active PUP right now, he's on the active PUP list right now, which means that they have up until the 53-man cut day to activate him from there. If not, he will go on the reserve PUP and be absent for the first 4 weeks of the season. It's just interesting how these teams kind of put these guys on the active PUP right up to the butt end of, right when training camps are about to start. And, you have to think to yourself, what does that tell you about how teams, or if these guys are actually injured, how are these teams and these organizations actually viewing the severity of these injuries? Jonathan Taylor, he had a high ankle sprain, I believe, but I mean, he finished the year. He finished the year, I believe. Right. So, what's the problem here? Did they hold? I can't. This is a question.
No, he was out for the last 3 games.
He was out for the last 3 games. Okay,
and almost in the entirety of the of week 15 as well.
Okay,
he only had 2 snaps that game.
My mistake about that. So yeah, so maybe there is some legitimacy to the injury if it was towards the end of last season. It is a bit concerning because it seems like if we're just discussing the injury and not contract disputes right here. Maybe they're just waiting as long as possible to having to put him on that PUP list.
Yeah.
And, this might be more of a signal towards there being some weight behind that injury, some concern, a little bit of concern towards that injury right now.
Exactly.
I am not a PUP expert guy. I was reading on PUP rules 2 days before this, just because I wanted to understand how active PUP works, how reserve PUP works, NFI works, injured reserve works. I mean, there's so many designations a player can have in regards to injury that you kind of have to parse through the weeds and look at these things individually, these designations individually to understand what they truly mean and understand the magnitude of what it means for the player and the injury. So yeah, JT, I think there's a little bit of concern here.
Yeah, I think so too. He skipped the entire offseason workout program. There was an early July report from Jim Irsay, who he's one of those weird owners who has to go out and make injury reports, but he and Jerry Jones, you have people, just let them do it. But whatever. So that's a sidebar. He on like July 11th, there was an update saying, well, he's fully recovered. Well, is he? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like it now. I mean, that's the thing that's kind of confusing. Are you holding off and clicking Taylor's name at the end of the first, beginning of the second now because of this in redraft?
I mean, you have to be, right? I mean, the first round, you kind of got to be. You got to wait till he drops till at least, the back of the second round to feel comfortable taking him right now.
I agree. And I already have some exposure to him. Because I was relying on Jim Irsay. That's my fault. Shame on me. And we did a draft in Vegas during the All-Star break because RotoWire always has a trip there during that. And I did take Taylor at the end of the first, and I do not like the cone of shame. So we'll see about that one there. Got a lot more injury and training camp news to discuss, but first, got to share a quick note with one of our sponsors, and that is Circa, who we spent that Vegas trip with in Vegas. Great time. They really cater to fantasy football players and sports gaming people as well. And to that end, you can get ready for more millions guaranteed. The biggest pro football contests in Vegas are back and bigger than ever, with $14 million in guaranteed prizes only at Circa Sports. Enter in Nevada, play from anywhere. 2 ways to win and no rake. Play Circa Million, make 5 picks against the spread each week with 100% payback to players. The grand finale winner takes home $1 million. Last place takes home a $100,000 booby prize. With quarterly and full season payouts, $6 million is guaranteed. You can also join Circa Survivor to select one team each week, straight up with no repeat selections. If the team loses or ties, you're out. You're eliminated. Each team can only be picked once in a season. Go 20-0 or be the last person standing to win it all. $8 million are guaranteed. $14 million total in guaranteed prizes. Visit circusports.com for details. We're also on the Blue Wire Network. Every RotoWire podcast is. Here's a note from our Blue Wire sponsors. All right, we are back. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Zareh Kantzabedian, and you can we're just going to call him Z for the rest of this pod. You can follow him on Twitter. You can read him at Football Guys. He's a Dynasty contributor there. Okay, Brock Purdy comes into camp not on the PUP list, ready to go for the Niners. A little bit of a surprise to me, I think. Given the nature of his injury and when he suffered it, I thought that he might be slow to start practices.
I did too. I mean, as you know, reading up on the Tommy John surgery, he didn't have Tommy John surgery actually, right? Did he?
I think he did.
He did. So, I mean, reading up on the severity of Tommy John surgery, I mean, from the medical experts on Twitter, it just seemed like a very serious condition. That would hopefully have him ready kind of by mid-season. So I was really looking at just kind of like, I was just expecting either Sam Darnold or Trey Lance to battle that out in camp. And now Brock Purdy's back. I am very, very curious. I am not part of the Brock Purdy faithful out there in the world. I am very curious to see how he sustains as coaches start to figure him out more and how he adapts as a quarterback. Can he, persevere through an entire season as a starting quarterback? I still think Trey Lance would be okay. So I think like Trey Lance, I like for this offense just because Trey Lance offers an extra dimension of rushing that is far more. It's just better for an offense to have that extra dimension as a rusher.
Right.
If you can, if there are more ways you can keep a defense on their toes, the better. Right. We saw Brock Purdy come in. He was a good system quarterback. Right. I don't know, how does Brock Purdy look in a different system? How does Brock Purdy look in kind of like a spread? How does Brock Purdy look as the quarterback of the Chargers? Does he find the same amount of success? Right. And I guess that's an irrelevant question because we are only talking about the Niners here and how he operates as a quarterback within the Niners system and how good he is at processing different things, different coverages as the league starts to adapt to him and his tendencies as a passer. So we'll see with Purdy. I'm not there yet. There are people out there who will trade a first-round rookie dynasty pick for Brock Purdy. I'm definitely not that guy. I maybe wouldn't even trade it. I might trade for a second for him in a super flex league. So I'm kind of out on Purdy right now. And I still think Trey Lance deserves a shot. For anybody to say that Trey Lance is bad, you have nothing to go on. There's nothing to literally go on to say he's undeserving. That's also illogical and a fallacy to say that, because the guy's played injured both times. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm still in there for Trey Lance this year.
Joanna said he's only played 8 games, had one of the lowest ADOTs in the league. It's similar projection to Jimmy G. Low upside, not a Super Bowl winner. I tend to agree with that. To further your comment, I would say it's a good time to buy low on Trey Lance.
That's what I'm saying. People are mad at me because people are literally yelling at me on Twitter because I prefer Trey Lance over Brock Purdy.
Yeah, well, people like to yell on Twitter, or X, as they like
really
to do.
Oh yeah, X.
I'm gonna still call it Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I even think, like, in redraft, I still think Lance, like, as a last round guy, is not a bad thing, especially like if you're pretty comfortable with your quarterback room already. If you you don't have to if you have one of the elite quarterbacks, you don't even have to draft a backup quarterback in redraft. Just troll off the waiver wire. But if you do, take a chance on a guy with a high ceiling. Go after like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Don't get like, I'm just trying to think of like just an average. Don't get Brock Purdy. I mean,
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, don't get like a guy like that as your backup. I mean, you can always, in a redraft league, a 1 quarterback league, you can always find something on the waiver wire. First of all, and secondly, you want upside. You want to be able to have the ability to trade someone who can be a starter for you. Find the next Justin Fields. That way, you have 2 options. Don't find just an average, boring guy that can't hurt you. You can find that on the waiver wire when you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And we've seen a lot of upheaval in the Niners, at the San Francisco Niners quarterback position over the past years with Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. There's no reason to say that it's Mr. Relevant, last final pick of the 2022 NFL draft is any safer than any quarterback that's played there before. If he can't get it right during the first month, if they have a negative win-loss ratio after September or even like mid-October, there's no reason to say that Trey Lance won't start some games. So we'll see how Purdy does, especially coming off that surgery. We'll see how he reacts to kind of the throwing mechanics. There's still a lot to be discussed right now. There's still a lot to look at. There's still a lot to be determined in that quarterback room right now.
For sure. The one guy I think it moves the needle for a little bit might be George Kittle. Kittle did obviously a lot better with Purdy in the second half of the season than in the first. That also might have been because the Niners were able to figure out some more protection schemes to free him up to run more routes too. It's possible. But that's something I want to watch a little bit there. Kittle is in that second or that third tier. If you count Kelsey as his own tier and Andrews as his own tier, then it's the third tier. If you count Andrews as part of the second tier, then I think Kittle is at the bottom of that tier with Goddard and all those. I love Kittle's skills. That hasn't dissipated. Health is obviously a concern, and usage is the other concern.
Yeah, the pass catchers obviously benefit from. I think they would benefit greatly from Purdy over Trey Lance, just because he's more of a pocket quarterback.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, let's move on. A guy that I'm surprised did not end up on the PUP list was Javonte Williams for the Broncos. We had heard reports during the OTAs and mini camps that he was progressing slowly, that he might not be ready for the start of training camp. Instead, he's been cleared to practice, and now they're gearing for him being ready in week 1.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if he plays, he plays. And again, I'm really kind of approaching cautiously with Javonte Williams. I'm hearing from I've heard from camp reporter that I trust a lot that he might be active, but he definitely won't be 100% to start the season. So again, I mean, he's fine at ADP. I'd have no problem taking him. He's going like the 7th round right now, maybe the back of the 6th round. That seems about right. That's fine taking him there as an RB2, but I wouldn't be expecting. Just set the bar low as far as expectations. If you're starting Javonte Williams during the first half of the fantasy season, don't expect be pleasantly surprised if it happens that he gets RB1 upside, but don't expect that. Just don't come out disappointed when you see Javonte Williams not performing up to par. What we've seen is reports of the Broncos that they're gonna be a very run heavy team this year.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. You said something that caught my ear a little bit, and we were talking about running back draft strategies on Monday, just kind of talking about the basics there. You said that he'd be your RB2, so 6th, 7th round. Sounds like to me like you're either a zero or hero running back type of drafter, more than a robust or double.
Yeah, you picked up on that theme, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's very few running backs I take at the back of the second round. I probably take Ramondre and Tony Pollard, Breece Hall probably, but outside of that, it's just very hard for me to, to commit to running back in those mid-round running backs. It just seems like a losing bet, really.
Yeah. I waited as long as anybody in Fishbowl in our draft to draft running back. So I might have taken it a little bit in extreme, but it's also a super flex draft, which is a whole nother story there. But and multiple flex spots too. So you could kind of structure your team any way you wanted.
Yeah.
So
a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, I love that as well. Let's move on. Michael Thomas. Full go, start of practice. We've heard this before. It's like, don't pull the rug out from under us again, but would you consider rostering him in redraft this year?
Yeah, but again, it all comes down to ADP, right? Don't hate the player, hit the ADP. And his draft cost right now is relatively low. And if you're looking for a cheap wide receiver too, there's your guy. There's Michael Thomas in PPR leagues. He's proven to be very valuable at this point, I think, in his career after all the injuries over the past several years. He's just going to be a pure possession receiver. And I think it's going to be still Chris Olave. It might scare a lot of people off Chris Olave, but I think Chris Olave will be the wide receiver one for this team. I think Michael Thomas's time as the apex on this, wide receiver room has come and gone.
I have Olave on my list to talk about. You drafted him in Fishbowl. I have him in a dynasty league, and I'm holding on to him for dear life and fending off offers for him left and right. It's just, he was a little banged up this offseason. He's got a new quarterback. There's a lot of new variables going on in New Orleans right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it too, like last year he had a new quarterback. Last year he had two new quarterbacks. He had Jameis Winston and he had Andy Dalton throwing the ball to him. So I mean, he adapted pretty well to them, to each of them. And quarterback play does matter. I think Derek Carr is better than both Andy Dalton and Derek Carr wasn't better than Andy Dalton last year, but we have to look at the historical kind of like trends.
Right.
Derek Carr has been better than Andy Dalton over his career. So we're just kind of looking at it. I think we're looking at a quarterback upgrade right now. And I think we just gotta kind of keep it simple and just look at the quarterback upgrade, look at what Olave did last year and just adjust accordingly when you see the quarterback upgrade, and then take Olave's stats and just kind of like raise them up a little bit better, a little bit more.
I agree. So the question is, what does that mean for us in our redraft leagues? Where do we go with him? Like, how early are we willing to take him? I think I'm pretty bullish on Olave. He's usually, I think I usually take him at the beginning of the third, which is where he goes. From July 1st at the NFFC, he's pick 25. Maybe compare that versus other receivers. So after Devontae Smith, right before Higgins, right before Metcalf, where does he fall for you in that range?
That's about right for me. Yeah, I think I take him over Devontae Smith. I take him over. Metcalf is a hard one to take him over. Metcalf is very difficult. I could take him over Metcalf. I could see more of a target market share going towards Olave, a heavier target market share going towards Olave, just because we are going to have Jackson Smith-Njigba introduced to the Seattle Seahawks offense. Charbonnet might get some receiving work. So that's a conversation for another time. I don't want to go too deep down the Seahawks rabbit hole right now, but we might have Olave as the more beneficiary of target market share.
There's a lot of talented skill position players in Seattle. We'll just leave it at that. Right?
Yes, it's just perfect. Yeah, you said
yeah, exactly. It's about I think that's about the right range. Let's talk a little Amari Cooper. He had a little bit of a setback at the start of training camp after like that one day before. They're like, oh yeah, he no limitations. He's going to be great. He won't be limited at training camp. Oh wait, suffered a tweak now. They didn't really say what it was, but they said it wasn't related to his offseason core muscle surgery. Cleveland as a whole, I think they're going to be one of the high variance teams this year. We don't know what we're getting from Deshaun Watson. We don't know what we're going to get from all these guys they've added. Elijah Moore, how much of a role he's going to have. And they're in a really tough division. I think they could be an awesome team to watch, or they could be like they were in the second half.
I learned a little bit about the quarterback position from watching the Quarterback Show on Netflix and watching Kirk Cousins talk about his his relationship with the new system that was introduced to him with the new head coach.
Yep.
So I think, you got to kind of take that into consideration when you're talking about Deshaun Watson in a new system who hasn't played for a very long time. I think you have to take the system and learning a system and learning. It's like learning a new language, really. I mean, you're learning new terminology. You're learning you're learning. You're probably learning new timing associated with your footwork. There's probably so many nuances that we just don't take into account when trying to understand the quarterback position and performance. We saw Watson play very well throughout his entire career, put up fantastic numbers, put up QB1 numbers, and I still haven't found, a mechanics-based reason as to why. I saw the stats, right? But that doesn't really talk to why he was bad. That no one's offered an interpretation of why he was really bad as a quarterback. They just, look at the stats and say he's bad. But there are there's so many intangibles that I'm kind of like alluding to that are really go unaccounted for. When you weigh a few games from last season in a new system, coming off of so many games missed against his entire career of production, what are you going to take, right? And I'm going to go against that entire career of production of what Deshaun Watson has done. We've seen Deshaun Watson in interviews and press conferences talk about what happened in games. He goes in great detail about explaining what happens in games. He'll go into detail about what was wrong with the coverage or the route concept. He's a very smart quarterback. So, right. I mean, I think, and also regarding the offense, I think they're just going to air it out more. I think they're going to be more of a pass happy team. I think we are going to see a change in philosophy in the way they approach the offense this year. I think we're going to see a lot more pass attempts out of Cleveland this year.
Yeah, and let's face it, football's already a multivariable equation. And Watson had more variables than most newcomers into jobs. I mean, coming back from the suspension, the weather in Cleveland, when he came back, had a lot of bad weather games. And we know that Cleveland in particular is a really tough place for quarterbacks to play. Back when he was with Houston and he was at the peak of his powers, there was a game against the Browns that people were like, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to this game. Should be a shootout. And then it was like hyper windy and it was like a 10-9 game or something of that nature. Wasn't quite Penn State, Iowa bad, but it was pretty bad. Yeah. And it's just that's also something you have to account for. I want to see beginning season Watson. I hope he waits till week 2 to get it together because I am a Bengals fan. So as alluded to earlier there, but nonetheless, it's going to be wild to kind of watch that.
Are the Bengals playing the Browns at home, or where are they playing?
I think it's in Cleveland, if I recall correctly.
That's gonna be a tough game for the Bengals.
Yeah, I will double check on that one there. I don't want to spread misinformation there. Wouldn't want to do that. It is in Cleveland for week 1. So there you go. Should be interesting. I think the Browns had a very good offseason. I like what the things that they did. So we'll see if how quickly they put that together. Before we move on, a couple more news items, and we're going to talk a little bit about Z's Scott Fishbowl team too, but got a couple more commercial notes to discuss. We're going to go ahead and do that right now. First, from Reality Sports Online. By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz is in the Dynasty community. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. You still not sure? You can test out your general manager's skills for free on a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use the promo code RotoWire to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. This podcast is also brought to you from the good folks from Fantrax. For you fantasy football players out there, is there something you wish your fantasy league had or features that are missing from your current leagues? Bonus scoring, custom schedules, or playoffs? Deeper team settings? Well, look no further because we have you covered with our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Create or join a fantasy football commissioner league, invite your friends, and dominate your draft this season. Fantrax is the top dynasty fantasy football platform in the industry. Are you coming from another service? Not a problem. Fantrax can easily import any of your current leagues and rosters and customize if needed. If you ever have a trade go wrong or making a mistake in dropping a player, Fantrax Commissioner tools allow you to undo any move with one simple click. If there is anything lacking in your current fantasy league manager, Fantrax likely has it. Fantrax is running a special promotion you don't want to miss. Sign up for free at fantrax.com/RotoWire to enter for your chance to win tickets to any regular season NFL game for you or your entire league, plus $6,000 in spending cash. That's right, tickets for your entire league plus spending cash. Simply create a new league or bring over your existing leagues for more chances to win. Simply go to fantrax.com/RotoWire and sign up today. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. Welcome back to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Zareh Kantzabedian from Football Guys, is the Dynasty contributor here. A big Dynasty question is putting a real value on Kyle Pitts. Really difficult season last year, but we've all heard generational prospect at tight end, 1,000 yards in his rookie season. But Arthur Smith is the head coach. They've got an unknown at Desmond Ridder at quarterback. He's coming off a big injury. A lot of question marks here with Kyle Pitts.
I am enthusiastic about the Falcons offense. I like them as the people to win.
I think you're on mute, by the way, Z.
I'm on mute.
Nope. Keep talking. I must be having some issues. Go ahead.
No, I'm enthusiastic about the Falcons offense this year. I have them as the team to win the NFC South. I think that I watched all of Ritter's games from last year. Last week, I watched all of his games played. I watched every single throw he made. What I saw from Ridder was a quarterback who's a good decision maker, who doesn't force passes into areas of the field that he knows he shouldn't be doing. He's a quarterback that goes through his progressions. If he doesn't see it, if he sees something he's not comfortable with, he'll check it down. If he can't check it down, he'll scramble. And Desmond Ridder is an underrated athlete. He can gain some yards on his feet. I like Ridder this year. I think the Falcons are in good hands. I think they have a good game manager right now in Ridder. I do like Pitts. I think Arthur Smith is going to get. I think bringing Jonnu Smith was good for Kyle Pitts because Kyle Pitts, you're right. So Kyle Pitts can now serve as more of a traditional wide receiver, lining up outside or in the slot, while Jonnu Smith lines up in line as a traditional tight end, which I think is also kind of sneaky value for Jonnu Smith. I've been thinking about this for the past couple of days. We've been thinking a lot about Kyle Pitts out wide, and he has a label of a tight end, but I think he'll be running a lot more receiver routes. And Jonnu Smith will be lined up a lot in line as your traditional inline tight end. And Arthur Smith likes to get Jonnu Smith in specific packages. But I think this offense is in really good hands with Ridder, with Arthur Smith. They had the number one run blocking line from per PFF last year. So I mean, Arthur Smith is a really good coach. I think we're going to see a lot of good things come out of the Falcons this year. I think that Ridder's value is going to go up in Dynasty this year. I'm a fan of Ridder. Ridder, he's very good. I mentioned that he's very good as a decision maker, but he's also very good as a creator outside of the pocket. When he has to scramble out to the flats, when he's rolling out on play action boots, accurate guy. He can throw kind of across his body to the center of the field, make very good throws. I'm very excited for the Falcons this year.
Yeah. And they have a big three now. I mean, they have Bijan, they have Drake London, they have Pitts. I mean, that's a lot of skill. Now it's just a question of like converting that all into production at the same time, but it could be a dynamic offense really quick.
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to, again, like we were talking about with Saquon Barkley, defenses are going to have to plan for Bijan Robinson. Tyler Algier was great last year. I was a big fan of Tyler Algier last year. His name came up on a lot of efficiency metrics I've researched this year.
Yeah.
But I don't think defenses are going to give them both Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier the same amount of consideration. When you have Bijan Robinson back there, you're going to have a lot of defenses playing with more stack boxes, creating more room in the intermediate levels of the field. You're going to see a lot more mismatches with Kyle Pitts on linebackers. So, I mean, it's just going to be a fantastic year, I think, for Pitts owners. I think they're probably going to see some fruit bear this year in fantasy.
For sure. By the way, you mentioned the quarterback on Netflix. I'm just starting that. I'm only one episode in, and it looks really good. But I'm curious to see how they handle Mariota in the second half of the season there. So we'll see about that. But looking forward to that. Yeah, it is unfortunate. You ended up with Bijan, by the way, in Scott Fishbowl. you get a lot of, I mean, you got the Robinsons, you got both Bijan and Brian. And I mean, I'm looking at your roster, and it looks like it's a fun roster. There's a lot of young upside type of guys on that roster.
There are, yeah. So I mean, for anybody that can't see it, I went Fields, Robinson, and Richardson, Anthony Richardson, my first 3 picks. And then I just went with value. I just went with value at wide receiver just because I never had any good value at running back, which I was planning to go towards and lean towards just because you get 0.25 per carry in this format. But the value was just never there. Like I just never liked who I saw at running back. So I just kept going for wide receivers who were, wide receiver ones for the team who should be the first read through any progression on most plays. Wide receivers are devalued a little bit, but I mean, point per reception per first down. There still is value. It's not that bad of a position to be drafting. And then I had to go more towards Brian Robinson and finally start attacking the quarterback once I filled up with like 7 receivers in a row.
I went 2 quarterbacks, 4 receivers to start. So very similar. You had Bijan at least early on. I didn't have that. But besides that, I felt very I felt this kind of the same way that I could get some running backs later. You got Mike Evans super late, and I was like, yeah, number 1 receiver on a bad team. Still, he's going to get his targets. I mean, I was going to go 5 if he was there for me. That I just missed out on that. So I would have gone with him as well. We were talking Darren Waller earlier. You got him, and it's tight end boosted scoring, so you got to like that.
Yeah, they're going to. I just read some training camp reports that Daniel Jones is hitting Darren Waller in the end zone like often. He was just hitting him so much this morning in the end zone today. So I mean, I'm very enthusiastic. That's very encouraging to hear. I also got Christian Watson, who I think I'm like one of the few people out there who still love Christian Watson. He's going to be the number 1 wide receiver on his team. Highly athletic player. We saw the Packers package a lot of, say that 10 times fast. We saw the Packers package a lot of plays for him, create a lot of package plays for him, use him up in different schemes out of the backfield, get him in space versus zone coverage a lot, running across the middle of the field. I like Jahan Dotson a lot. Got Jahan Dotson. And just took a bunch of shots at tight end. I took Jelani Woods, who's a very high upside. He's got a lot of upside. If he hits, he hits. I took him late. I took Trey McBride. If Zach Ertz can't go, Trey McBride's going to be an absolute steal in this format. It rewards the tight end position very generously in this format. And then I also took Hayden Hurst, who's, I think I perceive him, and most of the consensus perceives Hayden Hurst as a kind of a floor tight end, a solid option. Maybe back end tight end. Yeah.
I like what Hurst did with the Bengals last year. He did more late too. I mean, he came back from an injury after that, but I mean, that Buffalo game, he was huge in the playoffs there. So, you can see where he could have a lot of value there. You even got, you have Richardson to go along with Woods. You got a little mini stack there. You'd like to have some correlation because there's an overall contest too. Yeah. Let's talk a little Anthony Richardson though. I think you went perceived to be a little bit early. I think 3rd round, if I recall correctly. And you kind of put your foot down saying, I'm going to go ahead and take this guy.
Yeah. I mean, I think you alluded to the significance of the QB2 in a super flex format. And when you're looking at when I was looking at the rest of the QBs that were candidates for my QB2 roster spot, I didn't see any rushing dimension, any major rushing upside or major rush attempt carries, with the rest of the quarterbacks in the field that were left available. And Anthony Richardson, I think everybody's, looking at, the coaching staff over there and what they did with Jalen Hurts during Jalen Hurts' first year and how Jalen Hurts pretty much buoyed his status as a QB1 through his rushing, even when he was throwing to like Quez Watkins and like rookie year Devontae Smith, right? So we're going to have Anthony Richardson in that same kind of light. We're going to have him in that same kind of offense. He's going to be having a lot of rush attempts. And I was saying, okay, if I took Anthony Richardson at the beginning of the 3rd round reversal, right? And you have to take into consideration what's going to be available to you when it comes back to you, when you want that QB2. And I was saying, okay, if I'm not going to get if I don't like any of the running backs here, if I don't like any of the quarterbacks, let me get a quarterback who has a lot of rushing upside so I can knock out 2 birds with 1 stone and don't have to worry about kind of, it helped me. It helped alleviate the pressure of not drafting a running back later on in the intermediate parts of the draft.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I like the strategy. I think it worked out pretty well. I like the build. I mean, you've got the fastest quarterback room in the league with Fields and Richardson there. I mean, that's for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, I love Fields this year too. I mean,
Yeah.
I like that. I like what the Bears did around Fields, as opposed to last year when we knew he was kind of left, kind of like, wait, you got to wait one more year, kid, before we get this all set up. DJ Moore pairing with him there, and drafting a first round offensive lineman. They did a lot of things I thought they did right there.
Yeah, I agree. In DJ Moore, this is the only league I have DJ Moore in. And again, you have to you have to take players that you would normally hate and kind of install them into the scoring format of whatever league you're playing and saying, okay, I got to release my biases and look at the reward over here. And DJ Moore is probably going to get a lot of first time receptions. DJ Moore is going to be the top target on the team. So I mean, why not take the team's number one wide receiver and in a guy like DJ Moore? He's an athletic guy, skilled guy.
Breaking news happened during this podcast. Cole Kmet got a $50 million 4-year contract, $32 million guaranteed. As Joanna says, but why? I think germane to our conversation about running back value, Cole Kmet can get paid. Dawson Knox can get paid, but yet we can't get these multi-year deals here for some of these top running backs, for Josh Jacobs. Yeah, I can see why running backs are ticked off.
Yeah, that's just crazy. What's happening right now, man? I mean, Cole, I guess they really value his blocking. I mean, he was a good blocker last year. That's all I can really say about him. He had a couple.
I mean, I kind of like him. I think he came on the second half. I think he has some receiving skills, but
yeah,
he's tight end 10, tight end 12 in real life.
And probably what we're doing right now is conflating fantasy perception and with actual football coaching value perception. And I think they probably value him in a different way, much higher than we value him in fantasy. So I think we're probably conflating the two.
Of course, it just speaks to the value of that position versus running backs and just how they're treated. I mean, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
For better or worse, that's what way it is. And our sense of fairness, our comparison. I mean, we also see like running backs are a glamour position. We see it more. We see what they do on every single play. Whereas sometimes, linemen, tight ends, certainly linemen, many people don't see it. Yeah. I don't have the most trained eye for that. I rely on reputational reports. I mean, you can see that in certain cases, you can read certain stats, but for the most part, it's harder for the average fan to notice that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's so hard to determine how many more wins good blocking offers a team over, like rush attempts or, running performance. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. There are a million other things we could talk about, but unfortunately the man won't let us. We have to sign off here, but you can check out more what we have to offer at RotoWire, more what Z and his buddies at Football Guys have to offer as well. You can check out our free trial at RotoWire at rotowire.com/pod. If you do that now, there's no credit card required. We will also contribute $1 to Fantasy Cares for every free trial. So as both Scott Fishbowl participants, Fantasy Cares is the organization that Scott Fish is doing all this work for. It's a great organization, like to go out and buy Christmas presents for underprivileged children, things of that nature. It's a great charity. So rotowire.com/pod for that free trial. Every person that does it contributes $1, or has us contribute $1. So appreciate all that for that. Z, awesome stuff talking with you. Thank you for coming on board. Good luck this season, and hopefully play each other just once this year.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun season. We have a lot of sharp guys in our league. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Super fun draft, super great people. Do Scott Fishbowl next year. Follow along, follow the hashtag. Thanks, everybody, for listening today to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. We'll be back at you with another pod tomorrow. Every day of the week, we've got some material coming out for you. Thanks for listening. Take care.